Excited to have our presentation today by Lupin Battersby and Ali Moore from Simon Fraser University. It's on a topic which baffles me, but which is near and dear to my heart. When I got my position as a research impact librarian at the University of Alberta, which I thought would just be about bibliometrics, I was told on the first or second day that I was also responsible for knowledge mobilization. And my heart stopped for a few moments. And really, I find this topic interesting and very important, but I still don't have really a clear path forward for myself and my team in this work. So I think we're really lucky to have our presentation today. So to give me and other librarians and other people a clearer path on how the library and knowledge mobilization can and research impact can all work together. So I'll just do we do have a schedule for today. So we're going to do the presentation, and then we're going to have a Q&A, and then I'm just going to do some brief updates from our community of practice. So that's pretty much it for me, except I'm going to do introductions, and then I'm going to hand the show over to Ali and Lupin. So Lupin Battersby, sorry, is Simon Fraser University's Director of Knowledge Mobilization. And in this role, she provides consulting and training on knowledge mobilization. And really, the goal of her work is to support better institutional recognition for knowledge mobilization, which is a great goal to have, I must say. Thank you, Lupin, for doing this work. And Ali Moore is a librarian, also at Simon Fraser University, and she's been responsible for a wide variety of things, I must say. So scholarly communications, knowledge mobilization, digital humanities, research impact, and data visualization. And anyways, again, we're pleased to have you, and I'm going to stop sharing and you can take it over.
Thanks, Thane. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Give me a sec while I share my screen. All right. Excellent. Super happy to be here today. Also, sunny on our little piece of Turtle Island here. We are on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples, and this is unceded stolen land that we are grateful to be able to live, work, and play on as uninvited guests. And we've already been introduced. I'm Lupin. This is Ali. We are really excited to be here talking to you. Not sure if we'll solve all the questions that Thane has, but I'm hoping that in some of the discussion, we might be able to sort of crowdsource some ideas that will take it to the next level. But we will start with talking a little bit about the term, what knowledge mobilization, what is it, just so we're all sort of on the same page. There's definitely different definitions out there. This is the one that we use here at SFU. So knowledge mobilization is an intentional approach to enhance the real world impact of research through knowledge exchange between researchers and end users, collaboratively building research, sharing findings, and engaging with research outputs and products. Two things that are emphasized in this definition I just want to bring your attention to are impact of research beyond disciplinary academic spaces. While that is super important, the focus is beyond that here with knowledge mobilization. And also the other emphasis is the exchange, so that collaborative sort of bridge building. We also have this lovely little red umbrella to highlight what we consider is part of that knowledge mobilization umbrella. It is the science and the practice of implementation, of dissemination, engagement or co-creation, and commercialization. So for us, all of those sort of things are under this umbrella. We don't necessarily support every single one of those things at SFU because that's too big of a job, but we support a lot of that work. And speaking of supports, over to you, Ali.
Yeah, so we wanted to give just a little bit of background so that you would understand sort of where we're coming from in the context here at SFU. The Knowledge Mobilization Hub began as an idea, a grant proposal, in fact, in 2019. And it started off as a partnership between the SFU Library and VP Research International. So it was a 3-year pilot grown in the library, situated in the SFU Library Research Commons, which is a unit that's dedicated to supporting grad students and faculty in all kinds of research and research software support. So that's where we were sort of developing this. And the goal was really these kind of three aims here that you can see. So growing the culture of knowledge mobilization through consultation, training, and recognition of people who are already doing this work. While the Knowledge Mobilization Hub has actually since become a full-fledged unit of its own. It's moved out of the library into the VP Research and Innovation. Lupin and I still work very closely together, and those partnerships and relationship building that we formed within the library and beyond, I think, is really one of the key elements as to why it became such a successful and permanent office. And just, I think you may all be wondering, I know there's probably lots of librarians online, maybe some of you are not working in your library, but we really saw this as a kind of natural fit when the university was exploring where to situate the Knowledge Mobilization Hub within the university, especially as that kind of pilot, really wanting to set it up for success. So there's kind of 3 things that I think of as the main reasons why the library is a really great fit for this. The first one is that many of us are already doing support for dissemination, right? So helping people get their research published, support for data visualization, support for all different kinds of research outputs like digital humanities outputs. And so that expertise was already there. And really thinking about expanding into, support for implementation and those kinds of things. The library also has a really strong track record of, developing capacity building programs, hosting workshops, having good kind of outreach and reliable channels for reaching that kind of core audience when we were developing the Knowledge Mobilization Hub. So staff, students, postdoc, faculty, they all recognize the library as a place that they can come for resources for training. And so we're really just kind of leveraging that reputation. And then it was also really important for us to situate this resource in a sort of neutral space. I know lots of librarians on the line are going to be like, oh, the library is not neutral. We're not, but we are sort of disciplinary neutral. So folks can come and access resources in all disciplines, all career stages. We are cognizant, for example, of what would happen if we located this office in a building for applied science, for example, or, the innovation office that some researchers might not necessarily think that this is a resource for them. So we really wanted to signal by our placement of it that this is something that it could be accessed by everyone. All right, so we know that there's a lot of expertise on the line, and we want to take a moment to do a little bit of crowdsourcing before we move forwards. So we're going to do an activity called a chatterfall. And if you haven't done this before, how it works is I am posing a question to you. You are going to take a moment to type your thoughts into the chat, but you're not going to hit send. And then I'm going to give you a countdown, and everybody is going to send their thoughts and ideas in response all at the same time. So this is the question that we're posing for you today. How is knowledge mobilization supported at your library, or if you're not in the library, in the institution more broadly? I'm going to give you all 60 seconds to think of something. And as I say, don't hit send. And I will let you know when you can send that button. So with that, get typing. Just 15 more seconds. Okay, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit enter. Awesome. I'm just going to take a second to read through some of these. So data sharing, open research. Yeah, don't know. Also very fair, I think, as Thane alluded to. Like if you haven't been doing this work before, it can come as a surprise. We have lots of, yeah, scholarly communication supports. Amazing. I'm not going to read through all of these now, but I am definitely going to save the chat, take a look, because I think it's really interesting to see how everyone's different institution is bringing this forwards, and what that looks like, because it is different at every place. And that, I think I'll hand it to Lupin.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. And I just have to, Isabel short formed knowledge mobilization to knowledge mob, which I kind of just love. So just needed to highlight that. Yes, the knowledge mob here. Thanks for participating, and yeah, some really interesting connections in there. And all right, so we wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, why we're so interested in knowledge mobilization and why we're trying to, you know, facilitate or grow the culture of it at SFU here. So there is the clear social benefit, reducing research waste. You might have heard, if you ever sat in a knowledge translation talk, of the 17-year gap, which is the gap between innovation and implementation or impact. But there's waste throughout the research pipeline. And if we're doing good knowledge mobilization, we can reduce that. There's the potential of addressing misinformation and disinformation, which is definitely an issue more and more these days. And of course, to inform policy and practice with good evidence, so that those our policies and practices in whatever spaces are well informed. And then there's also benefits to researchers, such as increased funding competitiveness, recognition or invitations, opportunities get increased. And I think most important of all is this sort of deepened sense of purpose or achievement or fun that folks that really engage actively in knowledge mobilization have the benefit of experiencing. And you may be wondering why we have this little stream picture on the right here. It's you know, when we do a sort of evidence-based practice, we might not create this immense stream there, but actually create a space that has that's, you know, little better for our mental health and our climate health. All right. Of course, there's lots of critiques. You probably can think of them now, some of them right now, and you're welcome to share those if you would like to. So there's a concern that it perpetuates this sort of ivory tower perception of like we're sharing our wisdom from the heights of academia to the common folk. That is definitely not what knowledge mobilization practitioners and folks that are working in this space are for the most part trying to do, but there is that potential of that perception, especially in the early days of the knowledge mobilization sort of uptake. And there's a concern that it will reduce the freedom of researchers, that it's part of a neoliberal agenda, all of those things. It's like we're, you know, it's potentially, if we're so focused on our community engagement and our working with our partners and finding out what people actually need, that we might not just do research for research's sake. And a really big issue that I hear and that most consistently across the years and still now is it puts undue pressure and demand on researchers without sufficient or appropriate recognition through tenure and promotion and other recognition processes. Now, I know I said there was a benefit to researchers that sort of counteracts this point, but I believe that to be true. But we're still lagging a bit behind, particularly in the tenure and promotion side of things, particularly as really engaged research. So when we're practicing really good knowledge mobilization, we're doing research a bit differently, and we're doing it in a really engaged way, and that does tend to take longer potentially, and additional sort of time resources away from, say, traditionally evaluated items like journal publications. So we hope that folks get excited about knowledge mobilization, but we also hope folks do it well, and do it in a good way. And so some of our top tips are here. To do good knowledge mobilization is to engage partners. That could be community members, people interested or invested in the, or potentially impacted by your work, early, consistently, and throughout the full research process. In those partnerships, you want to make sure that they are mutually beneficial, so they're not extractive, and I want to emphasize the mutually beneficial. It doesn't mean that, you know, researchers are necessarily going out and doing work that's only going to be of interest and use to one community partner, but actually that is you know, fills them up in ways as well, or addresses their research questions as well. So it should be mutually beneficial. You should be mobilizing with your partners, and other interested groups. And so I just want to note that sometimes people stress out because they didn't do, you know, say, partnered work. You could still partner on your knowledge mobilization at the end of a project, or at the end of a program of research. There's always opportunities to partner. And also, of course, make sure that you write knowledge mobilization activities into your grant proposal budget. And if you didn't, then seek out opportunities to get further funding for that. The key to a good knowledge mobilization as well is doing a good knowledge mobilization plan. So a lot of folks, when they see that section of a knowledge of a grant proposal, the knowledge mobilization section, there's often just like sort of a laundry list of activities that get put there. Everything that they ever thought was cool that somebody did for disseminating something, or an event that they ever attended, and they're like, yeah, that was fun, I should do that too. And I really discourage that, because it ends up potentially not meeting your needs, and also potentially wasting resources, particularly time, which we all seem to have very little of. So I encourage folks to address these 3 questions first before they think of any activities related to knowledge mobilization. What are you sharing? Why are you sharing it? And who is the audience? It's really hard to answer those questions independently. You kind of have to work through it iteratively, go back and forth. And the sort of overview of what those might include are there. But really, really key is having a clear goal statement, so that you know that you know what you're trying to achieve with your knowledge mobilization, having a clear idea of who you need to be speaking to in order to achieve those goals, and also recognizing what you're sharing and whether or not you know, your activities are within the scope of what you know based on what you're sharing. So once you do that, then you can get to the fun part. You still need to take those answers to those 3 questions and apply them to this side. But yes, Bonnie, this is the how. I just don't like, I've separated these 2 into 2 slides. For years, I had them all on one, but people just want to jump to how, so I keep them separate. So then start to think about the how, and the how should be informed by those other 3 questions. And then that, where in those space, like how you do that is to think about, oh, well, who is that audience, and how do they access information, and what is this content, and what format can I actually share it in? And that, you know, that could be that, oh, you know what, I did a photo voice, so this is I should really be thinking about a sort of arts-based approach, or something like that. So it doesn't also need to be every single thing that you've ever heard of. So it's really being targeted and thinking about what would work for those for this audience based on my goal and what I'm sharing. All right, over to you, Ali.
All right, so we're going to move into thinking about how knowledge mobilization activities can also be part of the research assessment piece, ensuring so that we can ensure that people are recognized for it. And I know that I don't need to explain DORA to this community, you're all well aware, but I did just want to sort of contextualize the fact that as all of the tri-agencies are signatories to DORA, that really reaffirmed their commitment to excellence in research evaluation and the importance of knowledge translation. So the federal funders are really interested in seeing good knowledge mobilization, knowledge translation plans, and very much do want to sort of see this coming through in folks' grant applications and are wanting to reward it. One of the frameworks that we like to share with folks when we're talking about sort of ways that you can talk about how impact takes place is this co-produced pathway to impact. So this comes from David Phipps, and I can in a moment put the link to the paper that this is from in the chat. But just to give you a kind of sense of the fact that when you're working, with a research partner, as you're moving through that kind of research dissemination, uptake, and implementation, you can see that all of the work that we're doing to support the dissemination of research is actually happening kind of there in that second phase, right? We have all the different benefits to folks, and the dissemination benefits, those publications, presentations, things like that, are kind of that second stage there. And where impact is actually happening is on that partner side. It's not necessarily happening for the researcher. That's being enacted by the research partner. And that's where you're seeing your social, economic, environmental health benefits for the public, changed awareness, new research questions, et cetera. And so in thinking about the work that we're doing as librarians and like what we're supporting and where knowledge mobilization comes in, recognizing that those partnered projects are really one of the ways that this can happen and can be evaluated.
Right. So what we're kind of encouraging is thinking beyond how we've thought about impact maybe in the past. And so one way I'm often inspired and encouraged by Sarah Morton. I encourage you to read her stuff. There is a reference list at the end of this slide deck that has the links to these references here. But so there is, and these also can be about, if you were doing knowledge mobilization about your goals, you could have a knowledge mobilization goal of uptake. But that impact is beyond uptake, it is beyond use. It is something that changes because the research was used. So sometimes when we look at impact factors, what we're looking at, or what is actually not use. It is really maybe it's uptake because people are interested and they're reading it. Maybe a little bit of use if they like reference your work, but it's not necessarily something having changed. And what I also like here in this statement, so two things, the sort of proposed different definition of impact from Bailey and Phipps. Impact is the changes we can see beyond academia, which happen because of our research. So there's a theme going, you might have picked up on this, about change and beyond research. And then I also like Sarah Morton's statement that research impact is a people-based process. Research doesn't cause change, it contributes to it, which makes it harder to measure, but it's really also a recognition that you don't have to do a one-to-one measurement of, I found this little thing, or this researcher found this little thing, and you know, they put it into action and now this little other thing has changed. So it doesn't need to be that super linear process or assessment. So some of examples here of different approaches that folks have taken or that you might take are tailored assessments. So thinking actually before you have an assessment cycle coming of what your assessment of your impact is going to be. And then like being clear about that. So like, for example, that could be with a tenure and promotion committee. You could work with your chair before when you're on the beginning of your tenure cycle, so that when you get to the end, the assessment is reflective of the work that you're doing and makes sense for the work you're doing. There's various different qualitative research impact sort of tools and assessment tools that you could use. We really encourage people, and I think people are doing this more, but the inclusion of knowledge mobilization activities in CVs and contribution statements. And it's interesting because sometimes folks say, you know, I don't want to put that in there. It sounds like I'm boasting, or potentially they might stick it in the service section, but it isn't. It's really related to the research section, in my opinion, and that's how we approach it here at SFU, and many other institutions have that baked into their policies now. But actioning that is challenging. And then absolutely encourage folks when they're using sort of those qualitative approaches, or even using and also relying or using different numbers, is to combine the two. So have stories, narratives is a narrative statements is a very common, or not common, but is often asked for these days as an alternative way of discussing your impact. And so combining the stories with some of these quantitative measures in a responsible way is also another option. I am just going to pause for a second because I'm seeing there's a bunch of stuff in the chat, and then we're also going to ask you some other questions, but I'm just going to check on that.
Lupin, we can do the questions at the end after the presentation if you prefer, but I'll let you decide what you want to do here.
Well, I'll just quickly, I mean, it's relevant, sorry. And yes, there is pushback from, so basic researchers, bench scientists, whatever language foundational research. So the thing that I think I haven't been clear, and maybe Ali and I haven't been clear on, is like, we're not necessarily saying that every single person has to do this. It's that a lot of folks are, and a lot of folks would benefit from doing it. And so that's the sort of our audience for knowledge mobilization, and like training and so on, and even the recognition. So I have a colleague that I've been working with who is, I'm going to say, let's see, stats. So that they're a faculty member in the statistics department. And what he says, which I quite like, is, I just want all my colleagues to be recognized for the work they're doing in the way that makes sense for that work. So that's sort of what we're saying here. So if you're a particle physicist and it doesn't make sense for you to engage, say, a community partner in defining a research question, that's cool, but you don't need to do it. Although I will say the physicists here, some of them that I've been talking to recently would say they want to do different sorts of things, maybe more science communication, and like that sort of getting folks interested and excited and understanding STEM at a higher level. Anyway, I will come back to the open access. And yes, Miriam, we have a slide coming up about resources, but what And I will come to Marjorie's question after, but what I want to do, because it's a perfect segue, Miriam, so thank you, is take a second and do another little chatterfall with you. Allie, do you want to lead us?
Yeah, so just like we did before, you're going to type in your response to this question and hold, and then we will take a moment and I'll give you a countdown to hit send. So our question this time really is actually very much in response to that one in the chat. We want to surface from you if you're aware of strategies, tools, metrics, indicators that you've used to support research with knowledge mobilization and research impact assessment. So I will give you that same 60 seconds, and then I will give you a countdown. And as before, totally okay if you don't know and you're just here to learn. We will give some suggestions in response to this, but we just wanted to crowdsource because I think it's a great opportunity to surface what folks in the room are already doing. Okay, 15 more seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, enter. Unsurprisingly, seeing lots of stuff coming up about bibliometrics for this community. Policy citations, alt metrics, yeah, some dashboards, data viz. Modified version of Canadian Academy of Health Sciences Impact Assessment Framework. Cool.
Nice.
Well-documented data citations. Yeah, a really nice range coming through here, actually. And I think the fact that many folks are listing multiple approaches kind of speaks to the triangulation that sometimes happens when you're demonstrating impact, really using a variety of sources. I know David Phipps likes to talk about the fact that you should always be having stories and numbers in the same place when we're demonstrating, and that I think is coming through here. Awesome.
Yeah, and also some great tools being listed for knowledge mobilization too. So there's like the like for writing knowledge mobilization plans, like the child and youth knowledge mobilization kit. I am curious how, Sean, that you managed to do so I'm just going to read out your statement. Collaborating with researchers so they understand the extent and breadth of what impact can make or mean, and helping them to author strong impact statements, which we collect annually and then follow up with as needed to clarify, report, and celebrate. I'm wondering how you get folks to do those impact statements, if that's across the whole institution or if it's one department or something like that. So I would love to hear, Sean, if you can speak into the room, that would be amazing. Or you could write more in the chat about that. Okay, no problem, Sean. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, okay, so you have about 80 scientists. Yeah, so I mean, it's a challenge, right? I would love to do that, but we would end up having to pick folks, and then when you pick folks, then bias can get integrated into it. But if we had like our communicators that are in our department level, maybe they could be working with folks to do that. And then Ali, there was Marjorie was asking before we did the Chatterfall about conflating qualitative impact assessment with quantitative measures. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's a challenge because it's so easy to go to those kind of quantitative numbers, and recognizing that it's readily accessible. I mean, for many of us, we have like folks working in a research assessment office that can kind of quickly pull those, or as the bibliometrics person that you might be responsible for doing that. And so I think anytime I'm able to have a conversation to say, like, what if we expanded this to look at, developing more of a narrative or a story, that's helpful. Lupin, I don't know if you had something particular that you wanted me to point to there.
No, I was just thinking about that challenge. It's funny though. So I was writing a report, not a report. I mean, it was like one page there of like highlights of what the Knowledge Mobilization Hub had done in the first year. So this was a few years ago, and I gave it to someone here, director here, to say like, what do you think? Like, what am I missing? And they were like, there's no stories here. You've just put numbers. I was like, what? So he's like, I don't know what any of these numbers mean. Like, is that a good number, a bad number? And yeah, so I recognize that in our bibliometrics, we do have sort of standards, often in a particular discipline or what have you. But folks still need to know what they are, and that can be a learning process. But also, what really brought home to me was like how important it was actually for me to have the stories and use the numbers really just as illumination or evidence, or like Ali mentioned, triangulation. But it is tricky because then, a couple of years later, someone asked me for a grant proposal, institutional level grant proposal. How many knowledge mobilization outputs has SFU created? And I was like, what? The whole institute, like what? Nobody, what? So yeah, it was, we do get asked often for numbers. But I think we just need to respond with stories that have support from numbers. That would be my strategy. And was there any other ones in there that we wanted to like?
Do you want to flip to the next slide just so that we can show some of our suggestions too?
Sure. And I
did
realize I forgot to add one that I was going to add yesterday, and I'll add it before I send the slides to Thane. Yeah, so there's a few ideas in there. I really like the Knowledge Engagement Impact Assessment Toolkit from the U of Calgary. It's a nice thing that also can help you with your knowledge mobilization planning. It's a self-assessment, so it is a self-assessment, but it does allow you to sort of plan ahead of like, this is what I expect myself to do, and then you can sort of track and assess that, whether or not you've done that. There's a few other tools here. Thank you, Ali, for putting links in the chat. And yeah, I think I'd love, and this scope one, that was literally put in your, there was a presentation on this community of practice a few months ago. So I think actually Thane just sent out the slides from that the other day. And